19th century, after the end of the Napoleonic Wars. And that was also the case during the bipolar moment established after World War II. Both those systems, the Vienna system and the Yalta-Potsdam system, were characterized by stability, resilience, and reliability. They ensured lengthy periods of stability and calm for humanity. On the contrary, the Versailles world order has no right to be weak. Russia can't afford it. Russia can't afford rolling back its own, giving up on its own values, chasing the chimeras of globalism and liberal totalitarianism. History tells us that Russia's firm footing is necessary for security in Eurasia and in the whole world, ultimately. This resilience and strength requires a good, equitable relations with Russia's neighbors in Eurasia and like-minded groups around the world. I am confident that we can work together to find solutions to the most complex global issues. And the meeting that we are hosting today with your participation, colleagues, is a great contribution. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Naryshkin. And now I'd like to give the floor to guest of honor, the President of Republic Srpska, Milorad Dodik. Dear ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Shoigu, the profound transformations currently unfolding in the international order stem primarily from a new redistribution of power within the global system of states. The anarchic nature of international relations, particularly during recent decades of unipolar dominance under liberal globalism, has rendered international law effectively obsolete, while the concept of collective security, as advocated through the United Nations organizations, has been entirely sidelined. In place of the fundamental principles of international law known since the Peace of Westphalia and reaffirmed in the Charter of the United Nations, a new set of rules has emerged, dictated by the coercive authority of the collective West. These principles such as respect for sovereignty, the right to self-determination, non-interference in the internal affairs of other states, and other pillars of public international law have all but disappeared from public discourse. Political theory and practice both affirm that the foremost national interest of any state is its own security, which ensures its survival within the contemporary international system. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, security has increasingly become a privilege reserved for the wealthy North, that is, for the Western civilization. Within this hegemonic framework, the architecture of security has been constructed as a prerogative exclusive to privileged Western states and their allies, while the model of shared or collective security has been rejected.
Or other parameters. If we look at the history of conflicts in the world after the formation of the United Nations organization, we must say that there is not one single conflict of this kind where the West would have stuck to the principle of sovereign equality of states. You may revise the history of global conflicts over the past 80 years to prove me right. This position of the West has repeatedly caused crises in international relations. The selective approach to the application of the UN Charter was especially demonstrated in the case of Ukraine. We believe it is unacceptable to insist on the principle of territorial integrity that the West has, and which is supported by the Secretariat of the United Nations Organization and other international organizations, while they forget the principle of self-determination of nations. And is the principle of self-determination of nations that is the legal foundation of the process of decolonization, the process that brought freedom to a large number of the African continent and other regions of the world. The international community long gave a full response to the seeming legal collision between the principles of self-determination and territorial integrity. After many years of negotiations, the UN General Assembly adopted the Declaration on the Principles of International Law, which is a consensus document, and that document states quite clearly it is necessary to respect the territorial integrity of all states whose governments do not violate the principle of self-determination of peoples, and thus represent fully the population of their territory. We must ask ourselves, does that apply to the Kiev regime that unleashed a war against its own population after the coup d'etat of 2014? Did it represent the population of the southeast of Ukraine? No, definitely not. Just as in the 1960s, the colonizers in Paris, London, Lisbon, Berlin, Brussels could not represent the interests of the peoples of Africa that wanted to live under the governments elected by their people and not imposed from the outside. The same happened again after the coup d'etat across the territories of Ukraine, the former Soviet Republic. The Nazi regime that came to power after that coup for many years has been violating the rights of Russian and Russian-speaking population, and recently, starting from the 2010s, it started legally to exterminate the Russian world and everything connected with it and with Russia. The use of the Russian language, Russian-speaking media, and more. All of that is banned. Last year, they adopted a law to ban the canonical Russian Orthodox Church, which is a cruel violation of one more fundamental principle of Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations, which states that all states must ensure human rights despite the people's race, gender, language, and religion. The West uses every opportunity when dealing with countries represented in this room, likes to lecture others about human rights and honoring them in their own Western understanding. But look what happened recently, especially after the coup in Ukraine. Never have they used the phrase human rights. Not at all. Ursula von der Leyen and other Brussels bureaucrats and also the NATO leadership have stated publicly more than once that they must support Ukraine because it, quote, defends European values, unquote. So these must be the values, exterminating a national identity of the Russian or Russian-speaking people in that country. Just imagine, not even in the Middle East, or in Israel do they forbid the use of Arabic, the Arabic language. Palestine does not ban the use of Hebrew. And the same happens anywhere else in the world where people speaking different nations coexist, even if those peoples are not each other's best friends. Recently, Ms. Kos, a UN commissioner for extension or something or other, claimed that Ukraine had completed all the preconditions for starting the process of integration into the European Union. How does that match the European values which they profess? In fact, it is the demonstration of Nazi principles fully. On the initiative of President Trump and with the support of the President of Turkey and the leaders of Saudi Arabia, we have launched direct contacts with the leadership of Ukraine. On the 16th of May this year, Istanbul saw a resumption of negotiations. For a long time, Ukraine refused to participate. It was told not to become involved in that by their puppet masters, especially from Europe. When in Istanbul these negotiations resumed, we insisted that the principles that we profess be honored there, and we will keep insisting on that in the next round of these negotiations, which will be announced very soon. Russia has always, before the special military operation ever started and since its beginning, we have proposed to the Ukraine to settle all the issues by diplomatic means and dialogue. And we must thank the governments that have been of service to help restart these negotiations without any preconditions. In order to achieve success, we're firmly convinced it's necessary to eliminate the root causes of military conflict, which is something that the President of Russia has said time and again. One of those root causes is just what I mentioned, denying the millions of Ukrainians the right to use their mother tongue, Russian, and to honor the memory of their ancestors who had lived in that territory for hundreds of years, building cities and ports and tilling the land. And now these people are living in such conditions where in the south and east of Ukraine they see historical monuments pulled down, monuments to Russian czars and war heroes, the monuments erected to those who helped rid the world of German fascism in World War II. But there are more reasons than just that. And this is to do with the policy of pulling Ukraine into the structure of NATO. I have stated many times that a trigger to the Ukrainian conflict and in fact to the profound crisis of European security has been the many years of eastward expansion of NATO. Something that happened in contrast to the promises of Europeans and Americans given to Russia that NATO will not expand to the east. And not just these promises orally given that were violated. In fact, this was a violation of commitments signed on the highest possible level during the 1999 Istanbul and 2010 Astana agreements, which stated that security is to be indivisible and common, and that no country or group of countries can attempt to dominate across the territory of OSCE. And this is precisely what NATO was doing. When we tried to confront our European colleagues with that, telling them that they were violating something that their leaders had signed, the response was, oh, it was just a political declaration, and legal rights will only be given to those countries that apply for NATO membership, which proves that that position was a lie to begin with. And certainly Russia had to respond to that, to act against it. As President Putin said many times, we have tried to shift the situation into the negotiation mode to stay true to those principles signed, but the West refused. Even in 2021, this last attempt was refuted, and we had no other means to uphold the rightful interests of the people whom we could not abandon to the earth.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, it's a great pleasure to attend the 13th International Meeting of High Representatives for Security Issues. I want to extend my gratitude to Secretary Shoigu for the warm invitation to host country Russia for your thoughtful arrangements. The meeting this year is themed Building an Equal and Indivisible Security Architecture, Challenges and Opportunities Faced by the Global South and Eastern Countries. With the century-defining transformation accelerating across the globe, it is even more relevant to explore this topic. Today, the global challenges are unfolding like never before. We are in an era of hope. The historical trend of peace, development, cooperation, and mutual benefit is unstoppable. The Global South has accounted for over 40% of global GDP and contributed as high as 80% of the world's GDP, is a key force for maintaining world peace and driving world development. We are also in an era of challenge. Global governance is seriously inadequate. Acts of trickery or extortion cause severe harm. The world has witnessed hardship in economic recovery, intensifying protectionism, and grave challenges in free trade. Traditional and non-traditional security issues are interwoven. The threat of terrorism is on the rise, cybercrime comes with more variance, and the abuse of new technologies endangers new security risks. On major issues concerning all countries' fundamental interests and the future of humanity, the community must make the right choice, take common actions. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, 3 years ago, focusing on building a community with a shared future for mankind, President Xi Jinping has solemnly put forward the Global Security Initiative, which has been supported by over 120 countries and international organizations and written into over 120 bilateral and multilateral documents. China is ready to work with all other sides to practice the GSI and jointly build a world of universal security. First, adhering to multilateralism and opposing unilateral bullying. To address complicated issues in the world, the vision of multilateralism with coordination and cooperation at its cornerstone is the best solution. The world affairs to the true multilateral multilateralism, opposes any form of unilateralism, resolutely oppose the UN-centered international system and multilateral trading system with the WTO as the global governance system featuring extensive consultation and joint contribution for shared benefit. Second, upholding fairness and justice and opposing might makes right. Fairness and justice are what humanity pursues and the right way for countries to get along with each other. Should everyone stress my country first and obsess over a position of strength, the law of jungle will reign the world again. At the Paris Peace Conference over 100 years ago, the Chinese asked a question resonating across the ages. Does right prevail over might, or does might makes right? China stands firm on the side of international justice, calls for fostering a new type of international relations featuring by mutual respect, fairness, justice, and win-win cooperation, maintains all countries are equal regardless of size, strength, or wealth, resolutely opposes power politics and hegemonism, and firmly opposes that might makes right, or the strong bullying the weak. Third, upholding the authority of international law and opposes double standards and selective application. 8 decades ago, the UN emerged as an important result of the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War. The purposes and principles of the UN Charter provide fundamental guidance for handling international relations. We should firmly safeguard the international system with the UN at its core and the basic norms of international relations based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. Major countries must take the lead in honoring their words and upholding rule of law, and must not take a selective approach in observing international law. China has joined over 600 international conventions. We are firm in safeguarding the authority of international law, opposing any violation to it, opposing unilateral sanction that violates principles of sovereign equality of states, foreign state immunity, and non-interference of internal affairs, and opposes certain country in abusing long-arm jurisdiction. Fourth, jointly tackling security issues and opposing putting one's own security above that of others. In today's world, where countries are dependent on each other, all countries face shared risks and challenges. Absolute security and exclusive security are just not viable. China calls on enhancing global security. We have actively joined nearly 30 international conventions containing enforcement and judicial cooperation and concluded over 170 bilateral treaties on extradition or legal assistance. We are ready to work with other side to enhance political mutual trust and strategic coordination, boosting cooperation, law enforcement, and security. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, China stands firm on the right side of history and strives to inject certainty to the uncertain world. China is a robust engine driving global development. Since 2020, China's GDP has exceeded 100 trillion, 110 trillion, 120 and 130 trillion RMB in succession and reached 134.9 trillion yuan in 2024, up by 5%, contributing 30% to the world economic growth. Our opening up is an open development, and we are ready to share with other countries its development outcomes. We are also a constructive force for global security and stability. We have one of the lowest rates of criminal offenses, fewest gun crimes, and lowest incidence of homicide cases globally. Last year, the criminal offense incidence per 100,000 people is 237. We are ready to communicate with other countries to enhance our capacity to coordinate development and security. We are always a reliable friend with all other countries. We always view an advanced relationship with other countries from a strategic and long-term perspective and will not be swayed by any turn of event. China is always a responsible and reliable friend. Ladies, gentlemen, friends, with a shared future, all countries should uphold solidarity. China is ready to join hands with the rest of the world to implement the global security initiative proposed by President Xi Jinping and jointly deal with risks and challenges and contribute to the world peace and development with other countries. welcome to China to travel and visit. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Simbanzin. Instantly, I pass the floor to Secretary General of the Supreme Council of the National Security, United Arab Emirates, Mr. Ali Al-Shamsi. Over to you. In the name of Allah, merciful and benevolent, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, I'd like to thank His Excellency Sergei Shoigu, Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Also, I thank the Russian Security Council for the kind invitation to take part in that meeting that gives us an opportunity to exchange our views regarding the development of the modern world and countering different challenges that the world is facing. Also, I was glad to listen to their Excellencies Mr. Naryshkin and Mr. Lavrov. I'd like to appreciate the efforts of our friends from the Russian Federation on strengthening the international security and to stress the importance of coordinating our positions, especially in what concerns the rapid changes that we see in the development of the world order. These changes that are taking place have a special significance for us. We are strengthening, we are building up our efforts to strengthen the international security. We believe that every country bears its own responsibility for our common cause. Those crises that go on one by one, that actually go from one country to another country, and to climate change and other challenges that embrace the world, require our joint efforts for resolution, and certainly cannot be solved by one country alone. Unfortunately, there is inequality in terms of distribution of the economic potential, technical systems, and under this, in such conditions, the international tension escalates. The international organized crime is rising. We see the rise of ICT crimes, cyber crimes. Certainly, the development of the modern ICT is underlying the progress, but at the same time, ICT poses new threats. We in the United Arab Emirates are very much interested in setting up an efficient security system. Also, we believe it is important to build up the international cooperation. Such changes have to have a man in the very middle, because that's the man which is our main goal. That's why we are developing education, we're developing culture, in order to bring up that new man. And this is what we are calling on everyone, nationally and in our bilateral relations with our brothers across the world, because this is our common cause to build a better future. Now that the crises are mushrooming, when the problems and challenges in the international ICT become graver. A special role is played by the data exchange with our partners. This improves our immunity to the cyber threats that we are facing, ladies and gentlemen. We are in the fork in the road, historical, that requires pulling our efforts together and pursuing a flexible policy that will help us to address the challenges of the modern times. We have to offer equal opportunities for economic development, especially once we speak about the relations between the countries that should rest on equal rights of everyone. This is our common cause. I want to wish our meeting every success in all its efforts, especially in terms of strengthening the international cooperation. We stand up for friendship and cooperation between all the countries. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much, Mr. Shamsi. And that I'm passing the floor to State Secretary of the Security Council of Belarus, Alexander Wolfovich. Over to you. Dear participants in that meeting, let me cordially welcome everyone present in the room on behalf of the Republic of Belarus. I share the assessments of the current geopolitical situation that have already been voiced. For my part, I would like to briefly dwell on the approaches of the Belarusian side to the issues of resolving contemporary challenges and threats and ensuring regional and global security. Dear colleagues, we have to state that the situation in the world remains tense and difficult to predict. The risks of escalation remain high. We are witnessing a profound transformation of the entire system of the international relations and the irreversible process of forming a new multipolar world order. In the context of the degradation of the system of international securities, confidence-building measures and arms control, forms and methods of waging wars and military conflicts are being unrestrainedly improved. New types of weapons are being actively developed, and physical application is expanding. Artificial intelligence technologies are being used intensively and uncontrollably, which exacerbates the complex situation in terms of the international legal regulation.
A major global shock and rise of tension is caused by unprecedented growth of protectionism and trade wars in the world. The information sphere and cyberspace have long ago become a virtual arena of global confrontation. Other threats, such as international terrorism and extremism, illegal migration, illegal trade in weapons, people and drugs, are rapidly transforming. Unfortunately, the international organizations set up to ensure global and regional security remain unbalanced, and they are unable to respond in a timely manner to current challenges and threats. They are unable to ensure strategic stability as a whole. The world's largest conflicts in the Middle East and Eastern Europe continue unabated, and the escalation could lead to irreparable consequences on a global scale. There is concern about the growing risks of states engaging in direct confrontation, states possessing nuclear weapons. Despite the negative factors outlined earlier, the process of finding ways to defuse international tension and reduce strategic risks should be regarded as a positive trend. Belarus welcomes the measures undertaken to resolve the Ukrainian crisis. However, the risks of new provocative action and the expansion of military conflicts remain. In the Eastern European region, this is directly indicated by the unrestrained growth of militaristic sentiments and the aggravation of the situation in our region. 2 or 3 years ago, the peak of absurdity for us was the construction by Poland and the Baltic states of all sorts of fencing structures along the borders with Belarus and Russia. And by the way, the West had been fighting against this for decades. In the worst traditions of the Cold War, Warsaw, Vilnius and Riga have literally fenced themselves off from us and have completely destroyed all forms of civilized communication. This year, our Western neighbors went even further. They decided to withdraw from the Ottawa Convention banning anti-personnel mines. Under the pretext of strengthening NATO's eastern flank, they are working on plans to install mine barriers along the borders of Belarus and Russia. Obviously, despite all the attempts and the process of resolving the Ukrainian crisis, this indicates that the EU is unwilling to return the situation to the political and diplomatic track. The promotion of some European capitals of the thesis of an inevitable war with Moscow is particularly alarming. Under this pretext, the EU defense strategy is focused exclusively on increasing its combat capabilities and strengthening its eastern flank. Thus, it confirms its focus on the long-term preservation of its aggressive policy in the eastern direction. This is confirmed by specific figures. During this year alone, over 400 exercises involving about 500,000 of servicemen are conducted on the territory of European countries. The activities and the nature of the tasks to be addressed testify to the fact that the West is actively, openly preparing for military action against Russia and Belarus. All this convinces us once again on the need to relaunch a global dialogue on the formation of a new security architecture at the regional and international levels, an architecture that will be based on the principles of indivisibility, multipolarity, mutual respect, equality of sovereign states, and the rule of international law. One of the important elements in ensuring this process, among other things, is the Belarusian initiative launched in 2023 to develop a charter of diversity and multipolarity in the 21st century. The main provisions of the charter fully emphasize the relevance of today's agenda. In February this year, the draft charter was presented in Geneva to a number of international organizations, including the United Nations, the SCO, BRICS, European Union, ASEAN, and the CIS. Further discussion of this draft document will continue during the traditional Minsk High-Level International Conference on Eurasian Security. This year, at the suggestion of the President of the Republic of Belarus, the event will be held in the Eurasia Plus format. We take this opportunity and we call upon our colleagues to pay attention to this document and to join the process of developing the Charter. Distinguished colleagues, we have recently celebrated a date of great importance for many countries, the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War, the victory over Nazism and fascism. Today, this date is a special occasion to once again reflect on the causes of that war, its lessons, to refresh our memories of the decisions of the Nuremberg trial, so that the tragedy should never happen again. We are convinced that today there is still a unique window of opportunity to prevent confrontation, which the Westerners are actively pushing us towards. This should be done in the name of dialogue and the promotion of a peaceful agenda on the international arena and in the European region in particular. We sincerely hope that the consolidated efforts that we undertake will serve to develop a new political process to build confidence, security, and cooperation, similar to Helsinki, but in line with the realities of the present day. Distinguished colleagues, dear Mr. Shoigu, in conclusion, allow me to thank our Russian friends for their warm welcome and excellent working conditions. In the current challenging international environment, we highly appreciate this opportunity to exchange views on topical issues and measures that our countries can take to promote global and regional security. I'm confident that the common approaches, bold ideas, and opinions identified by the participants of this meeting will shape the basis for specific constructive steps. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to invite the Minister of State Security of DPRK, Ri Chang-da. В первую очередь, позвольте мне выразить глубокую
중심을 다하고 우리 대표단을 친철히 초청해준 서희구 서기장 동지를 비롯한 조직위원회 성원들에게 깊은 사의를 표합니다. 아울러 이번 연단에 참가한 세계 여러 나라의 대표들과 벗들에게 따뜻한 인사를 보냅니다. 존경하는 서기장 동지, 오늘 우리는 침략과 전쟁, 간섭이 없는 평화롭고 안정된 환경 속에서 전 인류의 내몬이 그 어느 때보다도 고조되고 있는 속에 이 자리를 함께 하였습니다. 조선민주주의인민공화국 대표단은 러시아聯邦안전이사회가 주최한 이번 국제상봉이 자주와 정의, 평화를 지향하는 모든 나라들 사이 단결과 협력을 도모하고 평등과 호혜의 원칙에 기초한 공정하고 안정적인 다국세계 창설을 추동해 나가는 데서 중요한 정치적 의의를 가진다고 평가합니다. 지금 국제무대에서는 특정한 세력이 독단과 전횡으로 말미암아 정의가 부정으로 범죄시되고 형편한 지배와 간섭에 의한 완전한 평등과 호상 존중, 내정 불간섭 및 협조의 원칙 등 세계적으로 공인된 국제관계의 기본 원칙들이 공공연하게 무시되고 있으며 그로 인하여 세계의 안전 환경은 엄중히 파괴되고 이 행성의 곳곳마다에서는 대립과 충돌이 악순환이 계속되고 있습니다. 세계의 그 어느 나라도 인류 공동의 이익과 국제법 위에 미국의 이익을 올려놓고 다른 나라들은 이에 복종할 것을 강요하는 지배주의적이며 제국주의적인 지정학적 구도를 바라지 않고 있습니다. 국제사회의 내몬과 배치되게 패권과 살해를 추구하면서 다른 나라들을 제멋대로 평가하고 진영 대결을 강요하는 미국의 일방주의적이며 군사 패권주의적인 정책은 국제평화와 안전이 근간을 허무고 있는 항시적인 요인으로 되고 있습니다. 조선반도 정세가 주기적인 긴장격화의 악순환 고리에서 벗어나지 못하고 있는 원인도 미국과 그의 추종하는 반평화 세력들이 배타적인 동맹추구 정책에 기인됩니다. 최근 년간 오커스와 코드와 같은 군사블록 형성으로 아시아 태평양 지역에 새로운 신냉전 체제를 구축한 미국은 미일한 삼각군사 공조를 제도화하고 이를 조선민주주의인민공화국과 러시아聯邦을 비롯한 지역의 자주적인 주권국가들을 억제 포위하기 위한 지정학적 수단으로 삼고 있습니다. 특히 유라시아 대륙의 불안전한 안보위기를 몰아한 주변인 나토가 미국이 부추긴 밑에 아시아 태평양 지역의 자기의 하부 구조를 이식하고 전쟁 준비 수준을 제고하기 위한 군사적 움직임을 번개가 있는 것으로 하여 지역의 불안정 지수는 날이 갈수록 격상되고 있습니다. 최근에 미국이 조선반도 지역의 핵잠수함과 전략 폭격기, 항공모함을 비롯한 전략 자산들을 공개적으로 투입하는 노름에서 역대 기록을 갱신하고 있다는 사실만으로도 우리에 대한 체질적인 거부감과 적대의식에 쩌든 미국의 군사적 대결 자세를 잘 알 수 있습니다. 아시아 태평양 지역에서 벌어지고 있는 이러한 미국의 진영 대결, 편가르기 책동은 불핍고 재앙적 국가를 초래하는 것으로서 절대로 용납하지 말아야 합니다. 미국과 그 주종국가들이 패권정책, 대결정책에 대한 조선민주주의인민공화국 입장은 명백하며 우리는 국가의 자주권과 존엄, 인민의 안녕을 위협하는 그 어떤 적대적 행위에 대해서도 추하도 묵과하지 않고 정의로운 투쟁과 강력한 힘으로 대응해 나갈 것입니다. 이러한 견지에서 조선민주주의인민공화국은 나라의 주권적 권리와 안전이익을 수호하기 위한 성업수행에 총매진하고 있는 러시아 군대와 인민에게 전적인 지지와 성원을 보냅니다. 존경하는 서기장 동지, 친애하는 대표 여러분, 지난 4월 말 조로 두 나라 군인들이 어깨 겠고 한 전호에서 피를 흘리면서 러시아의 신성한 영토인 쿠르스크 지역을 우크라이나 신나치스 강점주의자들로부터 완전히 해방한 것은 불의에 대한 정의의 승리인 동시에 조로 두 나라 사이 굳건한 전투적 우위와 두 나라 인민들 사이의 동맹관계, 형제관계의 가장 높은 전략적 높이를 과시한 일대 역사적 사변으로 됩니다. 러시아聯邦 경내에서 진행된 공화국 무력의 군사 활동은 유엔 헌장을 비롯한 국제법과 조로 사이의 포괄적인 전략자 동반자 관계에 의한 조약의 제반 조항과 정신에 전적으로 부합되며 그 리행의 가장 충실한 행동적 표현이 본보기적 사례의 훌륭한 기감으로 됩니다. 조로 두 나라 수뇌부들이 전략적 결단에 따라 새로운 높은 단계로 승격된 강력한 조로 동맹 관계는 제국주의자들이 강권과 전행, 군사적 위협과 간섭을 억제하기 위한 평화 수호의 강력한 보루로 전략적 지탱점으로 작용하게 될 것입니다. 조선민주주의인민공화국은 앞으로도 자주 평화 신선의 기치 아래 정의와 자주성을 지향하는 세계의 모든 나라들과 선진우호 관계를 발전시켜 나갈 것이며 평등한 다극 세계 건설과 세계의 평화와 안전 보장을 위하여 자기의 책임적인 사명과 임무를 다해 나갈 것입니다. 끝으로 나는 회의 참가자 여러분 모두가 건강할 것과 책임적인 사업에서 성과를 거두기를 바랍니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. Now it is my pleasure to invite the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Mr. Ahmadyan. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Shoigu for the organization of this important and influential international events. I want to thank the President and the government of the Russian Federation for the warm welcome afforded to us during this significant meeting. Distinguished colleagues, today the world is on the threshold of a transition from the old order, whose proponents left behind two devastating world wars. An order whose consequences have affected everybody. An order that emerged after two world wars. An order that through unilateral action in the political, military, economic and cultural spheres imposed the supremacy of one power in satellites, in hard, semi-hard and soft forms, on all countries and peoples, and imposed its oppressive and inhumane standards, values, and norms. The results of that order are obvious in Afghanistan, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and many other countries. This is an order, in its latest manifestations, the terrorist and brutal gang that is ruling the occupied Palestine can massacre women and children, burn them alive, or condemn them to a slow death by starvation, suppressing the slightest protests or objections, leaning on other Western countries and their satellites. This is an order that is based on the exploitation of the weak and injustice. And the core of this order is a lack of justice. And the outcome is endless wars, poverty, and killings around the world. Distinguished colleagues, we are followers of a divine and monotheistic religion whose commandment is, do not oppress and do not let yourselves be oppressed. Now, this means that our religion not only forbids submissive acceptance of oppression, but also considers the act of oppression itself unacceptable and abhorrent. Now, the motto of this religion is, the state can withstand without belief, but it cannot withstand under oppression. In other words, power can be maintained on the basis of godlessness, but it cannot stand if it is built on injustice. The experience of humankind has also shown that imposing and perpetuating oppression does not bring security. On the contrary, it sows the seeds of instability. For more than 70 years, Palestine has suffered occupation, and its people have been subjected to atrocities, torture, exile, starvation, and genocide. The world system of domination has repeatedly perpetuated this situation. Today, however, the root of all instability in our region is the persistence of that very injustice. Distinguished colleagues, I would like to call you to attention at the beginning of the third millennium. I want to warn you all. An entire nation is facing the threat of mass murder, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. What happens to the world if it turns a blind eye to the global disaster? In this transitional or post-bipolar world, biased interpretations of international values and principles by certain powers, regional and global players, have gone unpunished. Destabilization of different regions of the world, deprivation of national sovereignty, committing mass crimes in full view of the whole world, denial of people's right to develop and to progress. All this is happening under the cover of different interpretations of generally accepted international norms and values. Clearly, expansion of global security depends on new world order that would offer equal opportunities to all countries, to all nations. Therefore, a new security architecture should be built with the participation of all the countries, all the peoples. Ladies and gentlemen, security, from our standpoint, is based on a rejection of oppression, maintaining identity and sovereignty of different nations and countries, and establishing equal relations with other countries, with no pressure, no sanctions, or coercion. This also includes respect of people's rights and support of the oppressed across the world. The creation of a just and equal system is impossible without contribution of all the peoples, all the countries. Iran believes that justice is the key link that is missing in the global system. On the other hand, global security is unattainable without taking into account human dignity, without spiritual growth and resistance to oppression. And at the next stage, we should think about the preservation of the family. Unfortunately, today, the security of humanity and the security of the family as the basic unit of society is subject to destruction and trampling. Security devoid of human criteria and protection of family values, in fact, is meaningless. Distinguished participants, today, various global security institutions and the world in general fell hostage to the inefficiency of the current security systems hijacked by Western powers. And the best proof of this is the inaction of these structures in the face of the many months of genocide in Gaza. These crimes are the result of exploitative treatment of other countries, deliberate creation of economic and technological inequalities. and the deprivation of peoples and states of free access to the benefits of humanity through sanctions and restrictions. A prime example is the attempt to deny the Iranian people the right to a peaceful nuclear program. The Islamic Republic of Iran, based on its ideology, rejects domination and subjugation, but always welcomes equal dialogue. We emphasize the renunciation of weapons of mass destruction. Yet Iran will not give up its legitimate rights, such as independence in the nuclear sphere, including possession of the fuel cycle and uranium enrichment. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the steps of the Islamic and progressive countries of the South and the East in the transition from a unipolar world to a multipolar one will chime in a new era in the history of the world based on peace, justice, and equal development. On this path, common interests and opportunities, as well as common threats, will be shaping the prospects of our future cooperation and will help strengthen its foundation. Strengthening of multilateralism and joint efforts to build a strong and equitable security architecture is an urgent need of the international system. Successful examples of this can already be seen. I'm referring to organizations such as the BRICS and the SCO. In the new order, full participation, inclusiveness, given an active role to those players who have not previously had the opportunity to fully engage, are indeed key solutions to ensure security in the new context. Together, I invite you to build a world where honesty, coexistence, and justice replace the language of threats, discrimination, and sanctions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Akhmedian. It is my pleasure to invite the Secretary General of the National Security Council of the Republic of Turkey, Mehmet Şukai. Over to you, sir.
Esteemed colleagues, I would like to begin my remarks by thanking the Russian Security Council and Secretary Shoigu for hosting such an important meeting. In today's world, where new trends come into the scene continuously, the erosion in global governance, the weakening of multilateral institutions, and the difficulty of coordination in global issues are the most important challenges. We are concurrently facing numerous political, military, economic, environmental, technological, and social challenges in the international system. Armed conflicts, terrorism, irregular migration, xenophobia, and Islamophobia Unfortunately, the current international order cannot provide peace, stability, and justice. Specifically, cannot produce effective solutions to the scourges of the global community, especially to the ones the peoples of the global South and East are facing. The troublesome ineffectiveness of international institutions are frequently voiced by Turkey, especially by our President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Today, when we talk about the crisis of the international system, we are not referring to an abstract concept, to see that many countries turn a blind eye to the atrocities in Gaza. Unfortunately, the civilian death toll has exceeded 54,000. The tragic events taking place there and the shocking indifference of some in the global community raise justified questions on a rules-based international system. Another issue facing the international community is that the increase in prosperity brought about by globalization is not distributed fairly at the global level. The most important consequences of this situation is undoubtedly food insecurity and famine. It is extremely grave that from Africa to Asia, millions of people are struggling with hunger. The only way to change this dark picture is to strengthen international cooperation and solidarity. The solution to global challenges requires collective efforts forged by cooperation and effective multilateralism. We strongly believe this is where the opportunities lie for countries like Turkey and many others of the global South and East, for building a global architecture of equal and indivisible security. By engaging in dialogue and collectively voicing our rightful demand for a fairer world order, we can create meaningful and positive change in the global governance system. With this goal in mind, Turkey actively participates in many global and regional organizations. While honoring our commitments in the context of our long-lasting alliances and acting as a stabilizing force in those institutions, we are building new ties with other organizations, especially those from the global South and East. To further enhance our ties with the countries of these regions, we have formulated the Asia and New policy alongside our Latin America and Africa partnership initiatives. The future of humanity in relation to science and technology is another issue. Turkey strongly believes that scientific and technological innovations should not be seen as a trump card to increase competitive power, and that all nations should benefit from the advanced technologies, including artificial intelligence. Likewise, as Turkey, we have always viewed the energy and transport issues as areas of cooperation rather than competition. In addition to our own needs, we have implemented many projects that support regional and global energy security, as well as transport corridors in various directions. Furthermore, Turkey is committed to assisting and supporting developing countries in their sustainable development and growth efforts. Our development aid is making a visible difference in many parts of the world, including the global South and East. Distinguished colleagues, Turkey considers security as a matter of shared responsibility, moral obligation, and global solidarity, and believes that it should be human-centered. We will continue to cooperate with like-minded countries for a fairer and more inclusive international order and more resilient security architecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mimish. I give the floor to the General Secretary of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Mr. Nurbayev. Mr. Shoigu, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to speak here at this international event. The building of an equitable and indivisible security structure is of particular importance to a transnational organization such as our SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Our priority is support of peace, stability and security. We're not a military political bloc united by the principle of military support. We're non-confrontational and not aimed against third countries. A specific area of our work is countering terrorism, extremism and extremism done by a particular structure within the organization. The 26 member countries of SCO are committed to turning our region into a prosperous and secure space. The approaches of our organization are shared by the Astana Declaration signed by the leaders of our countries and other documents of the kind. SCO there speaks in a single voice for unity and not division, cooperation, not confrontation, justice, not hegemony. It is clear security cannot be a privilege for a few. It cannot be secured at the expense of others. The Astana Declaration says SCO member countries state that interaction within the organization can help build an architecture of equitable and indivisible security in Asia. SCO member states study here the Russian-Belarusian initiative for building an architecture of security and a joint vision of the Eurasian Charter of Inclusivity in the 21st century. SCO is undergoing a process of modernization and adaptation to the realities of life. An important component of that is improving the response mechanisms that are triggered by security challenges. This means building a comprehensive system of specialized institutions, such as a comprehensive center to counter threats situated in Tashkent, which works in the sphere of information security and organized crime. In Dushanbe, another structure will be established, the Energy Center of SCO. SCO works also in the socio-economic and cultural spheres. Esteemed participants, at present, we are now preparing for an SCO summit in April next year in Tianjin, China. We are sure that this summit will propel the organization to new levels of cooperation. Acting together with our partners, we are prepared to play an even greater role in building a new, stable, democratic, equitable and secure world with a structure of indivisible security for all. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, we will now have a lunch break that will last until 2 o'clock Moscow time. And we will continue in this same room under the chairmanship of Mr. Kokov. Thank you. Enjoy your lunch. Long time, Ukraine refused to participate. It was told not to become involved in that by their puppet masters, especially from Europe. When in Istanbul these negotiations resumed, we insisted that the principles that we profess be honored there, and we will keep insisting on that in the next round of these negotiations, which will be announced very soon. Russia has always, before the special military operation ever started and since its beginning, we have proposed to the Ukraine to settle all the issues by diplomatic means and dialogue. And we must thank the governments that have been of service to help restart these negotiations without any preconditions. In order to achieve success, we're firmly convinced it's necessary to eliminate the root causes of military conflict, which is something that the President of Russia has said time and again. One of those root causes is just what I mentioned, denying the millions of Ukrainians the right to use their mother tongue, Russian, and to honor the memory of their ancestors who had lived in that territory for hundreds of years, building cities and ports and tilling the land. And now these people are living in such conditions where in the south and east of Ukraine they see historical monuments pulled down, monuments to Russian czars and war heroes, the monuments erected to those who helped rid the world of German fascism in World War II. But there are more reasons than just that. And this is to do with the policy of pulling Ukraine into the structure of NATO. I have stated many times that a trigger to the Ukrainian conflict and in fact to the profound crisis of European security has been the many years of eastward expansion of NATO.